So it's like when we have something yummy and you eat something yummy or you cook something yummy, we're all about sharing. I'll call my
Mhm.
friend and I'll be like, hey, I made this thing, can I give you some? And she'll be like, yeah. And I just made this soup. Like, can I give you some? And I'll be like, yeah, sure. So it's like if you have something good, you want to pass that on to somebody else.
Welcome to Mom Mentality, your virtual village of support. I'm Jessica Campbell, your family wellness coach, and I am committed to helping you prioritize your and your family's well-being. This podcast will be like your favorite ladies group chat come to life. We'll share the ups and downs of life for moms just like you, get real advice from coaches and experts, and I'll pop in with my own stories and tips on everyday challenges to the big questions. Whether you're juggling work from home, balancing adult life with parenthood, tackling ADHD, yours or your kids, or just trying to catch a breath, Mom Mentality is your spot.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your backstory and just who you are.
I'm Rima, and I am a precious parenting coach based in the Geneva, Switzerland area. And I have been an expat mom for, basically about 20 years now. But I grew up in London and New Jersey. And I think one of the things that I like to just come forth and put out there is that I am a lover of heart and a lover of human connection. And I think that really describes or gives the evidence for why I do the work that I do and why I believe that the role of parenting is the most important role that we will ever take on in our lives, or caregiving. I mean, you don't have to be a parent, but a caregiver of any type where you are guiding another human being. So that's a little bit about me, I think. I mean, and I'm a lover of chocolate.
I love that. No, I couldn't agree more. I think, especially being in the States, I tend to say a lot that I think we've done a disservice to family here. And I think that we're in this phase of, I think, bringing that back. I think a lot of, especially like my generation and younger generations, want to bring that connection back. And for a while, I thought it was just me because I had such I hate saying traumatic childhood, but I mean, that's really what it was. But it feels, I don't know, it feels weird for me, I guess maybe because that was my childhood, like you don't want to ever say that. And then sometimes I feel like traumatic is just such an overused term anymore. It's become like that trigger topic. But I thought for a long time it was just me that like I craved, that respect and that holistic relationship. And even as I've gotten older, having those relationships with just like people in general, not just with my family, and wanting, loyalty and wanting that like deeper connection. I mean, I go to church every Sunday. So even thinking in terms of that, like I want to be close with the people that I spend my time with, and if that's not happening, that can get really frustrating. And, back to what you said, I think that it's such a lost art. I think the connection and the villages and just the communities we, used to have.
Yeah, I agree. And I think modern day and the advances in technology and social structures are influencing our parenting. So we can't only look at how we are engaging with our children at home, but how these external influences are impacting us. What I like to say is that we can have a loving home, which I believe I had. And there, like you said, you feel like you had a traumatic childhood, but no doubt your parents loved you, right? And they were trying to do the best that they could for you. And the same thing for my childhood, but there are different paradigms of parenting that our parents took on to raise us. I've believed that a successful home, and again, that doesn't mean a perfect home, is one that is a loving home and a connected home. And what I mean by that is that each individual's needs are getting met, everybody's voices are being heard, each one is interested in the other, and we're able to attune to one another. And it's not just about me, 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 me. And then this is where the contradiction occurs, because one of the most important things about being a parent is really focusing on me as the parent. And
Right.
So this is where it becomes like, well, what do you mean? Like, I'm supposed to be really taking care of my child, but then hold on a second. This new, parenting revolution is telling us that, hold on, we need to really look after ourselves first and do for ourselves first before we can do for our children. right?
Right.
So the elements of self-care, self-regulation, and self-apology, like all these things we have to be able to do and understand for us as humans before we teach it to our children to navigate relationships and life. So it's very interesting. And I just feel like, wow, we really do need, some real parenting education
Right.
before we become caregivers, before we choose to be parents. If we want, my vision for the world is just like, and I'm sure you share the same sort of feeling, is just more kindness and compassion for one another. And it starts at home, and it starts with us as human beings, as individuals who are, guiding these next generations.
Right. I always think of the part on like the movie Miss Congeniality when she's like, I really do want world peace. Like that's how I feel. Like I do. I want world peace. And like I believe it does start with family. And you mentioned self-apology and those, how we just need more resources before we start. And I think of back when I was getting ready to like have my first kid, and it was like, here's a parenting class, but it was really a how to give birth class, which let's be honest, like we're all going to figure that out. We got to go through it. Like we can prep it if we want, but that's going to get figured out. Whereas it would have been way more helpful. Like, how do you manage once you have this baby, colic or all the things? How do you stay calm? How do you not, there's a reason people talk about shaken baby syndrome. Why are we not giving people the tools to stay calm in those situations? And I think that's where there is such a big gap, looking back to my childhood. So my mom is a narcissist, and she'll tell you she's not, but she is. And I've had to have this conversation because I've gone no contact within the last 4 years with my kids because they don't quite understand it. And being the ages that they are, they want to be like, well, then we don't like that person. And I'm like, she's my mom. I love her, but she doesn't know how to have a respectful relationship with me. And so it's okay to put that boundary up that you can't be around somebody who doesn't treat you, in the way that you deserve to be treated. But it's funny because like when I look at it from my dad's side, and my dad was very hot tempered, and we have a great relationship now, even though we still see very differently on our views. But like looking back at the lack of resources for people like him, like he was so well intentioned and yet so dysregulated. And if I didn't understand that, I don't know that as an adult we'd have a relationship, but now we're able to heal our relationship because of the things I've learned now. And so, I think it goes so much further than helping with, even young kids. I'm an adult child, and I'm able to work on my relationship and kind of plant these little seeds in his head where he'll come back and be like, you said that, and I was thinking about this.
Totally.
Being able to look back and be like, they did the best they could. Like even with my mom as a narcissist, even with her, like, 'cause she had addictions and things like that. Like when she was on though, like she did the best she knew how to do. And I can hold space for that and say like, I understand. And, I wish you the best, and I'm not going to put myself in that position anymore. And so I feel like if we had, maybe in terms of like my childhood with that clash of like, a high-tempered person and then another person triggering that all the time, and there being that like chaos, if there had been more available to them and more put out there, handling those situations may have looked a lot different.
Sure. And, you brought up the, educating yourself piece. And let me tell you, I'm a pediatric physical therapist. I've got a health promotion certification. I'm an infant massage instructor. And of course, a parenting coach. But prior to become a parenting coach, I was like, I got this covered. I know how to be a parent because I know about children and, I'm about child development.
Right.
But I was suffering when my kids were like primary school age. I was like, losing my temper. I was going through I need to do this. I need to do that. I'm a perfectionist. And I was really being an expat brings along other challenges of trying to find a community that you belong to. And belonging is so important for a parent to have a space for support and a space that, people respect your views and you respect theirs, and, honoring those differences and knowing that, we're allowed to raise our children in the way that we believe is right for us and our families. And so, yeah, but I was still like, okay, hold on a second. Something's not working here because I'm losing my cool with my kids. This is not what I envisioned parenting to be. And I grew up in an environment where academics was seriously important, and that's all that seemed to surround me. And so my sort of what I was valued for was how well I did in school and how, how sort of like my manners and things like that.
Right.
And nobody really kind of looked deep inside of me and was like, hey, what do you feel about this? How do you, what do you think about this? Like, we didn't have those kinds of conversations. And that's what was lacking when I was trying to then be with my kids. And it was like, and I was, a stay-at-home mom for a while because my husband traveled for work a lot. And it was just like, just trying to get through the day, right? You're just ticking off I need to look after my kids and make sure they're fed and the laundry's done and, and then the activities and whatever, all the millions of things.
Right.
And then time gets spent when you live away from family. You're trying to find other support systems, and then you're connecting with family. And yeah, anyway, you get the picture. But it really took a moment of, and this is, I think, what was really meaningful for me is realizing that parenting is a journey of awareness and reflection. And because that's what we need. It's like taking a test, I guess, right? Like you do a test and then you see what you got right and what you got wrong.
Right.
And you go back and you're like, okay, well, how come I got this wrong? And that's the same thing with parenting. Again, it's not about a right and a wrong, but it's about
solving.
Yeah, exactly. It's a problem solving. It's like, and we have to be able to make mistakes. And this is the thing. It's like, a connected home is a home that really embraces imperfections as an enriching journey for childhood and parenthood.
Right.
And that's the thing I think we really forget because, we look around and everybody's showing off how great everything is and perfect everything is. Yeah, of course, everybody likes to see that stuff. But we really need to get down to the authenticity of who we are, of what our families are. Like, what is that authentic nature that is actually what helps us thrive? Because it's the authentic connections. It's the authenticity with how we choose to show up for our kids and how we choose to demonstrate the skills that we have as parents that we then model to our children. So that was such an awareness piece for me, is that, hold on a second, I really need to start pointing the finger towards myself and not towards my kids. Because that phrase, oh my God, you made me so mad right now, out of my mouth so many times.
I drive my husband crazy with that because he'll be like, you're making me mad. I'm like, you can't make your dad mad. And then he's like, I'm like, that's for daddy to worry about. That's his feeling.
Yeah, exactly. Which sounds funny, but no, it's not funny,
Right.
So, yeah.
We have to have that conversation often of like, yes, other people are responsible for their feelings, how they feel about the situation. And we still have to make sure we're mindful of how we treat other people, because there are things that you can do that can still be, considered rude across the board, or, there's a certain collective opinion of the way we behave in our manners and whatnot. But, sometimes just because you say something, even though you didn't intend that, that's for them and how they manage it to like handle it. But going, to what you said of like how we handle our own, like how we look at ourselves, you don't know what you don't know. And so I think, having the conversations and opening that up to do that reflection and look, once you start looking, then you're able to find those little gaps that, need filled. And I think if we're louder about this, and I know you said you kind of like lacked that someone looking deeper into you, and I did too, because it was very much based on like you're fed, you're clothed, like that old school kind of mentality of like, no, you're taken care of, but the emotional needs weren't necessarily being met. And maybe that's why we're talkers.
Yeah.
Because we're like, we have so much to say, we have so much value. But like, if we get loud about who we are and how we parent and what we want for our families and for our lives and all of our relationships, maybe that's how we find that village. Because most of us are too afraid to say something. But the louder we get, the more we find our people.
Yeah. And I love that what you said is that we get to define, how we want our families to look. And let's talk about it. Yeah. Let's be loud about it. Like, and the fact that, our emotional needs not getting met to the degree that we needed them to be met as children it really, I think it really defines my need for human connection more and more as I see, if I reflect back to all the stages of my life and why I seek that now so heavily and why it brings me such joy when I have those deep, authentic connections with, it doesn't have to be like 100 people. It could just be one person. And that brings so much value to my life and energy for me that, and we can get that from our children, we can get that from our spouses. But it just means taking the time. And a lot of parents are like, I don't have time for this awareness and reflection stuff, like, all this journaling and all this sit down and have time with myself. But really, it's a habit, just like it's a habit cooking for your children, just like it's a habit taking a shower, that, make it a habit if you care about your parenting, just to say, hey, waking up in the morning and being like, this is what I want to do today for myself or for my family. And ending the day by just asking myself, like, was I able to do it? And if I wasn't, why? And if I was, well, what made it so good? Like, why was I able to do it? So it's just literally, you might think it's like, it is a conversation with yourself.
I was gonna say it's a constant narrative in my head. I'm not a big journaler and I want to be and I try, but I lack consistency and I have ADHD. It's a hard thing for me, but it's a constant narrative in my head. Like, and it makes me think of, like, since we are kind of at the time of this recording coming up on our new year stuff, it's like when they say you don't have to start at the new year, you don't have to start at the beginning of a month, you don't have to start on a Monday, you can just start right then and there. And that's kind of how I go through life, because I do have so many, like, I'm juggling so many things. So sometimes it's like at 2:30 in the afternoon, I'm like, oof, I've not been doing that well today. Let's reset right now and decide that the rest of the day we're going to be more intentional. And so sometimes it looks like that. But if you have that constant narrative, I think it's in the back of your mind and you're thinking about it, it helps you to start to integrate it a lot more.
Actually. And honestly, I just want to be mamas and papa bears. Like, you do you.
Yeah.
That phrase, I know it's like we hear it so often, but it really makes sense in parenting. You do you, because you're responsible for yourself. You can only control yourself. Do what you feel is right for you. And would you not say that to your kid? Like, you wouldn't say to your kid, do what the other kids are telling you to do, right?
Because I was like, I don't want that influence. Like, there's so much bullying and so much, I want them to feel confident in their decision, and I want them to feel good about the choices they make, because so early, like, we get so set in like what other people want. And I can already see people pleasing tendencies in my oldest. And so we started because for one, she was ahead of where she needed to be for kindergarten. And I never intended on homeschooling, but it just went well. And now that she's been diagnosed with ADHD as well, it's helpful for us to meet her where she's at now. But like, that was part of it. Like, I didn't want other influences. I want her to be her guiding light and her to decide what she is okay with and what she's not. And it's been a lot of hard work for that one, because I was a yelling parent when she was little. And so she had a lot of anxiety, and we're working through some of those things now, but I'm starting to see now that she just hit that 8-year-old threshold of how her brain's shifting and how she's starting to like become a kid and make those choices and become her own person. And it's, like, if we had more of that intention for ourselves, like we do for our kids, I think things would look a lot different.
Absolutely. And I think, this concept of not defining who we are by our behaviors and not defining our children by their behaviors is so powerful, because it's so easy when things are going tough and not the way you want them to, because out of protection for yourself, self-preservation, you're going to blame somebody else and you're going to look at that superficial behavior as the thing that's making you crazy. But ultimately, like Dr. Becky Kennedy says, I love this about her, is good inside. Like, when we start believing that we are all good inside and that we just, we just having a hard time with something that's come up and we need to learn how to cope with it. Those are the skills that our parents are supposed to teach us if they know how to deal with it themselves. And if they don't, please, parents, go get help. Like, reach out to your friends, reach out to, your family members, reach out to a parent coach, an educator, whatever, a book. there are resources out there to develop the skills to raise resilient children, to develop compassion and increase resiliency and face challenges, because they're always going to be there, to face challenges in a way where you are always, 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 nourishing your relationship with yourself and your kids or anybody else in your, in your circle. Because that's ultimately what's life about. It's about human connections, right?
And I mean, even taking that one step further, I know in the entrepreneurial space, they always talk about get in the room with the people that you want to be like. And that's another thing to think about, like, who are you asking advice from? Who are you leaning on? Are they the people that maybe can't see those gaps and they're just contributing to, unknowingly, like obviously none of it's in malicious intent, but maybe they're contributing to a way you don't necessarily want to be showing up. So kind of get in the room with people who share those same values as you and want, similar things for how they want their family to go, which actually kind of leads me into this question that I have for you. How has being an expat mom shaped your parenting? Because that I've heard a lot of things about other countries and the way their cultures are set up, and like how has even moving around, you've been in a lot of places, how has that all shaped your journey as a parent?
Well, I think that, moving around has, with young children. So when my babies were born, I was moving around, and until they were sort of school age, we stopped moving and then settled here in the Geneva area. And because parenting is such an intense life journey, I always searched for people to share the journey with, to talk about my story, talk about my everyday, and also to listen to other parents, and finding that connection where somebody's listening to you and just, you can kind of feel that heart to heart connection. And the more you get that, the more you want it. It's a little bit of it's like a good addiction, if you want to call it that. And so I crave that, honestly, like in my day to day, having this conversation with you, connecting with a girlfriend and just talking about our everyday, whether it's about parenting or whether it's about, our families, extended families, whatever, it doesn't matter, our work, just having that authentic conversation around sharing really allows you to feel more grounded. And I guess as you talk about what's happening with you, you get to know yourself better, if that makes sense, right? Yeah. And somebody listening to you and then, kind of asking you questions about, well, why did you think that? Or why did you do that? Not in a judgmental way, but a real friend will just be curious. And I think sorry, I'm diverting from your question. The question why, we tell, when our kids are little and they're like, why this, mommy? Why that, mommy? Why? And you're like, I don't know why. That is one of the most powerful, words that we can encourage when children are little, and also for ourselves, because when we're looking at a situation, we're trying to tackle it in parenting. Why is one of the biggest things we need to ask. Like, why did my child just do that? Why did I just yell at them? Why is everything feeling like it's falling apart? If we don't ask that question, we don't actually get to the root of the problem, and then we can't create a solution. We can create a solution if we look at the superficial problem, but it's only a solution that's going to work temporarily. But that question why is so important. But going back to, really seeking community has been one of the pieces that has come to light for me, is that how important having a supportive community is, especially when you're moving around, to keep you sort of in the space of knowing that, you have support when you need support. You don't have to do parenting alone, and you never have to do parenting alone, and it's okay to reach out. That's the other thing. It's like you're having a tough day, whether you need somebody to come and kind of sit with your kids for 10 minutes or 15 minutes, or whether you actually need to say, hey, I need a babysitter for this evening because my husband and I need to go out and whatever. Yeah. So I think moving around has actually brought a big awareness to how important that authentic connection is to have with other human beings, and especially with myself. So, because when you're moving around, you're meeting so many different types of people, which is fantastic. But it also means that, it's very easy, if you don't know yourself, to be influenced by all those in your, in your circle? And are those influences the right ones for you and for your family? That's for you to decide. But it means that you really have to know yourself, and what you want for your kids, what you need for your kids. And so, yeah, the crux of it is, again, really going back to the self and focusing on the self first. And I guess you could say it's parenting yourself before you parent your kids, or alongside parenting your kids, right?
Yeah. It's so funny that you say that, because I'm actually in this stage of, so I made a very good friend at my school job, and we have not even met in person. And actually, that's kind of how all of this stuff became what it is for me now. Is during the pandemic, I was like on TikTok, just desperately looking for someone who shared my same like thought process for how I wanted to parent. And I didn't have people around me before that. And I really didn't have people around me during the pandemic. And so I became a virtual, like looking for people. Well, I became friends with this person at work, and she's getting married. And I was like, I'm going to go visit. And normally I would bring my entire family, but I've started to realize like I need some time. Well, I have another friend that happens to live, she moved to around the same area. And so, I invited her because, again, we used to do hair and makeup, helping out this other friend by doing hair and makeup. And so I was like, hey, do you want to do this? And now the two of us like want to go have mom time, but also we're kind of like, we're both nursing. Her baby is only like 5 months younger than my baby. And so we're both kind of like, I don't know. But she messaged me the other day, and she was having a very hard day. And I think, she lacks that community. She's in a new place that she doesn't have a lot of, people around her, and she's a stay-at-home mom. And so it seems like every time we talk, she gets into this comfortable enough state where she can just cry and let it out. And I always hold space for her. She knows that I do. And I think it's beautiful that she's able to like let that out. So it never phases me. I'm like, girl, like, of course, it's hard. Like, you don't have anyone. And so now the two of us have collectively decided we need some mom time. And as hard as it is, we're going to try to step away and allow ourselves to have fun. And this wedding's like a 2-day wedding. It's like a whole thing. It's a Disney wedding. It's a big deal, right? It's gonna be big. Let's go dance and take care, like have like, you don't realize how much you also need mom time. And that comes with that self-awareness too. And like, because my friends have moved away, my other friend lives in an RV. So I don't have a big circle. She lives in an RV. The other one moved away. And then the other one I made friends with lives in Florida. So it's like, I don't have people like right here with me. And so I was like, let's all just together and just enjoy each other and have that, because we don't get it often. And I don't think we realize how bad we need it until we're burnt out. And then we're like, oh my gosh. And then we're crying to each other like, it's so hard.
Yes. And parental burnout is real. And it's just escalating. And the impact on mental health for parents. And then, of course, that translates and trickles down into our, younger generations. And also for those of us parents who have older parents and trying to also look after those parents, we're parenting above and parenting below. And that also impacts how we then treat our parents, when we're in burnout state or in, parental stress and fatigue and exhaustion. So, again, coming back to the self, I have a free guide, which I wish I had when my kids were little. It's basically like 3 tools every parent needs. And it's called my Happy Home Guide. And it's the self-care, the self-regulation, and the self-apology. The 3 things we've been talking about. It's so important. The self-care, just fill your cup. And it doesn't mean like, you don't want to be filling your cup and feeling guilty. But like I said, sometimes it only takes like 5 minutes, and you deserve that. If you want to be able to show up for your kiddos in a way where you can be real and not perfect, again, you can show up and be like, yeah, I've made a mistake, because now I realize I've made this mistake because maybe I didn't fill my cup. Maybe, the self-care stuff isn't, working for me right now. And it's not just about taking that time out and like replenishing sort of your superficial needs, but again, like, how are you actually talking to yourself? That's a huge element of self-care. What am I telling me of myself about how I am as a mom? What do I believe about myself as a mom? It's your mindset and beliefs around yourself and how you're engaging with your kids and providing for them. That's huge area of self-care that I find parents are not aware of because we don't talk about it. But we're talking about it now. Yeah. And the self-regulation piece, that's like, how are we going to, nurture and nourish our nervous systems and help us get back to a state of calm and understand what calm looks like for us, what our triggers are. Like, we need to know all this, if we want to be able to respond calmly with our kids. And of course, the self-apology. We're human. We all make mistakes. We admit, we don't always have tools. And just like Maya Angelou, there's that famous quote of hers is that I'm paraphrasing, of course. It's like, we do what we know. And then when we know better, we do better.
Do better. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So you learn new skills. It's like when you go through school or you're in a degree, you're learning how to become a mechanic. You learn certain skills and then you see, oh, hold on a second. It's not working for this car.
Right.
I need to pick up some new skills for this other car, which is like our kids as well. It's like certain skills and tools will work for, one child in the way you implement them.
Right.
But the same tools will work for another child, but the way you implement them will be different because you got two different human beings. So yeah, once again, the emphasis on the parent is huge here in how we raise our kids. And we just can't put it all on our children because they're learning from us.
Well, I think it's true of so many relationships. And for me, I try to look at like the relationships as a whole too, because I feel like if we can heal a lot of our relationships, that's going to help our kids. Like, right. For example, like just having a good relationship with my husband is helping my kids because I have the self-awareness to say, this is bothering me for this reason. Right. And, going back to some of my friends, like the friend getting married, she doesn't have kids, but both of her parents, their mental capacity is declining. And there's dementia talk and there's a lot of things going on. And it's interesting as her and I are talking how some of these principles, and of course, like developmentally, they're slipping. So they are getting kind of back into that childlike phase. And so it's like she's got kids. She's got kids. They're just not her kids. And, when we talk about it, it's so interesting to see how these same principles can be applied to all of the relationships. And her and I have talked, nonviolent communication and things like that because she's got them living with her and then her fiance. There's a lot going on. And, just as anybody, we all have so much happening all the time, but to have the awareness to look back at those things and still apply those same principles, yes, holistically, it really helps the entire family. And so if you think of like, multi-generational homes and being able to look at the relationship with the grandparents and then having that self-awareness to heal those relationships is modeling that to your kids. And so, all of these things, it's not just for parenting. I mean, you can apply these same principles to your spouse or your coworkers or, your siblings. I've, done that with I feel like I've just created a ripple effect in my family and
absolutely,
it's beautiful to watch. And so even if a person listening to this is like, I'm just now pregnant, right? I don't know what's going to happen. Just being able to use those principles within all of your relationships is so beneficial for that self-care and awareness, because if you're able to work on those other relationships, that is a form of self-care and you're going to show up better for that by being able to, even with your adult relationships, like they might be a little more perceptive. So it might be a little easier to start there because your kids are a little bit more like they need the autonomy. They're going to like push back every boundary and like what they're supposed to do. And so, yeah, I think we also don't think of it in terms of just relationship building. And I think sometimes people get scared of like the parent coaching title or needing help as a parent, but it's really just holistically helping families, I think.
Yeah.
I think that, having that support. And I don't know if we need to necessarily reframe it or just be more transparent about what that looks like so people aren't so afraid to say, I don't know what I'm doing. Like parenting's the only thing that doesn't have a book, right? Like sometimes we just need someone to lean on.
Yeah. And what's coming up for me from everything you just said there was just living from the true self as a human. And I don't know, Jai, if you had exposure with Rebecca Liddon, and she would just call it's about humaning. And I so dig into that because it is, and I've seen it in my own relationships as I've been more reflective in all my relationships, actually, with my spouse, with my, mother-in-law and my mom. Unfortunately, my father-in-law and father are no longer with us, but and with my friends, with other relatives, of how, conscious humaning has really been such an awakening, really, in being able to feel more grounded and happier and just feel like you're not struggling, because you can have perspective shifts and, being able to move away from judgment of who you are and what you do, because you're always fine tuning, you're always thinking about, okay, is this right for me? Is this right for the other person on the other side of this interaction? And that's so valuable because you're just able to create harmony more readily without having to go through, like a crazy emotional outburst or, disagreement, whatever, and then do the reflection. But here it's like a bit of prevention, argument prevention or conflict prevention when you have some of these skills of nonviolent communication, emotional intelligence, intention setting. I mean, there's a whole gamut in the parenting toolbox. And so I actually had a client who came to me because he was looking after his mother. And he said, do you mind if we rephrase this course? Instead of conscious parenting, we call it conscious childing. I was like, I'm all for it. And that's what it is. Like you said, it's just conscious living, conscious humaning, the skill of building relationships based on, the authentic connection that you have with yourself, that then that gets to trickle then into every other relationship that you have. And yeah, I'm loving this conversation we're having right now because it's such a place of goodness.
Yes, I know. I love it.
I love
it. And it's funny because like I mentioned, as a person of faith, I feel like it's even helped me align my faith too, because like, I think a lot of times people have a hard time, especially in the Christian realm, of like, how do you like love in a way, we have so many things that we can be hateful for. I started reflecting on that with my husband, and I was like, what feels really weird to think about is the fact that I could even hear a story of a murderer, and my immediate reaction is like, well, how did that happen? What was going on for the kid? Like, because my first thought is not like they're terrible, right? And so even on that big extreme scale, it's so interesting to see how you can start to want to understand other people. And I think that that's how you just love other people. And so it's helped me grow in my faith too, and how I want to be as a person, because I am able to look past, again, the behaviors and the things and try to understand like who this person is and what's gone on, and learn how to not like disregard a person for being a person, and understand how it came to that, and not in a way to just like brush off any behaviors that they've done, that being just a very extreme example. Like, obviously there's always consequences to the behaviors that we have, but also understanding the why behind it, and just wanting to know the person, like you said, on a human level. And I think when we scale that back to just being with our relationships and our kids and, who we're around, being able to have that skill is just invaluable. And it opens up your world in a way that you don't realize it opens up, and how things can just like blossom from there. And I have intentions of a group coaching program. And, you said you love hearts and you love connection. And I actually have decided I wanted to name it Heart Core Connection. And, because like I've always been a little emo too, like based on my upbringing. So I was like, yeah, hardcore, like, like that sounds amazing. And so like, I think of it like that. And the play on words of it being hardcore, like hardcore love, hardcore heart, hardcore connection, like you're all in on that. And it's like so intense, but like, I'm in. I try to catch you. Yeah, but in the most beautiful way. Like, yeah, it's everything that you're saying just resonates so much with like where I'm at, and my like how I look at the world and look at my family and my relationships. And I think it's just beautiful. But I did want to ask, when you were going through these, so I know you've talked about like looking for the community, how did you kind of implement those tools, I guess it's just a family. Like, how are you instilling that connection and putting those systems in place for your kids?
Yeah, I mean, it takes time, right? It's a process of just trial and error. And I remember my kids were like in their teens. So they'd be like, Mom, why are you saying that? Like, that's not how you talk. Why are you using those phrases? And sometimes, when you're not used to used to not having certain skills and you're trying to use them, they're not you, right? So at first it feels very sort of acted. But then, the more you do something and the more you see consistent results, and in this case, I get more cooperation and more harmony, more pleasant feelings and warmth, it becomes more natural to use those tools. And I'd be very honest, and my kids were at that age where I could have discussions with them and say, hey, look, I'm really trying to work on this side of my parenting. And so I'd love for you to tell me what you're seeing or what you like or what you don't like. And that piece as well, I think, going back to the being human part is like, being able to see every human being, whether you're the parent or the child or the friend or the Christian person, the Muslim person, when you see and value each other as another human being who has feelings, who has a heart, who has a brain, who, has parents, who has the same basic makeup, you're like, why am I going to value you any less? Why are you less important or me more important? And obviously that hierarchy exists still in society, right? And we need to break through that. Honestly, it's just got the judgmental approach and hierarchical approach, like bringing that to a space of interaction. It's just it's yucky.
Yeah, that's gross all the time. I was like, that's just gross behavior.
It doesn't make anybody feel good. And so when we don't feel good, we don't behave well. When we don't feel good, we don't want to cooperate, because we just want to, then we resort to ways to how to make ourselves feel better. Right. And so, I'm grateful to my kids for being able to, be with me on this journey of bettering myself. So that I can be better for them. And we're still, it's, having conversations now. My daughter's 21 and my son is 19, still having conversations with them about sometimes hard topics. I think it through beforehand, or, sometimes I'm like, okay, I'm going to say something and it may not feel good to you, but I need to put this out there. It's a process of trying things based on the foundation of those, principles. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but you got to start somewhere. You've got to start practicing. And it's the muscle that we're working on, that parenting muscle.
Right.
And the more we use it, and we use it in a way that's, connection building, connection nourishing, we know that we're, on the right path, or at least if that's the path that you want.
I've had those conversations where I'm like, these people, like, they don't just wake up one day and like do bad things just to do bad things. And my dad's like, well, sometimes there's something wrong, because people have talked about like there's a chemical imbalance or there's something, but I'm like, that's the thing. There's something else that causes that. Like, I don't believe any one person comes out of the womb and is just inherently a bad person. I'm like, that's not how it works. Something triggers that. And maybe something does trigger it when they're in the womb. So I guess I should scale that back. But like, there's some outside source, right? Like, you don't just, in the perfection of you as a person coming out into the world, you're not bad. There's something else that has caused some of these things that we see, because there is so much, just so much horrific things going on in the world. And I'm like, but there's a pattern. And when people actually look back at those things and see what's going on, like, I've never been able to just think of, when sometimes people eye for an eye and this and that, I could never think like that. And even some of the most terrible things, I'm like, what is bringing this up? There's something going on there, because people are good people. People are good inside. Like you were saying, like, there's something going on. And we need so much more curiosity in this world. And it's funny that you said like your kids would be like, why are you speaking like that? Because there's been a couple of times where my oldest is like, why didn't you yell? And I'm like, because I'm working on it. Didn't I do good? Hey. And we like
Yeah.
hype each other up. I'm like, aren't you proud of me? And she's like,
Yes.
yeah. I'm like, because I'm trying not to. And like, there's times where I'll say, Dad's a couple steps behind me, right? He hasn't gone
Yeah.
through all of the information, and I'm working on like, I've actually turned the workbooks into a podcast with AI so he can listen while he's at work, because he works late and he's got, his schedule's kind of crazy. So I'm like, well, at least get the information. So you hear the development, you hear those things and you understand it. We don't have to coach, but like get the information so you know what's going on. And I made him listen to the Good Inside book after I read it, because I was like, this is amazing. So he's just a couple steps behind, still a little trigger happy on occasion. And so there are times where I'm like, Dad's still learning. Dad doesn't handle it the best, because they'll come, to me like, Dad made me. I'm like, he's getting there. He's getting there.
Yeah. And why not help each other out, right? I mean, we all want to, see our loved ones be like grow and be the best possible versions of themselves, right? So yeah, if you've got something good, it's like, I like my community that I have here, we're all about food and friendship. So it's like when we have something yummy and you eat something yummy or you cook something yummy, we're all about sharing. My friend and I'll be like, hey, I made this thing, can I give you some? And she'll be like, yeah. And I just made this soup. Like, can I give you some? And I'll be like, yeah, sure. So it's like, if you have something good, you want to pass that on to somebody else, but that person has to be also, you don't want to just like shove it down people's.
Like, I'm definitely the person that's like, try it.
You ask permission, right? You ask permission. Would you like some? So it's the same thing. Like, I tried this in my parenting and it worked for me. I don't know. It might work for you. You want to just try it. And it's such a good feeling to share, to know that you get goodness from some element of parenting. And that if somebody else takes that on and may also receive that same offering or blessing, whatever, like, great. Yeah, that's how we spread the kindness. That's how we model it for our kids as well. And I feel like the reason I share so much food with my community is because I saw my mom doing it growing up.
Right.
So again, looking back at my childhood and looking at some of my behaviors now, I'm like, hey, why am I, such a connector via food? It's because I saw my mom do that. Like, why am I always listening to other people and what they're going through? Because my mom would always be doing that with others, in her community. So there's that part as well, So yeah, it's fascinating.
That's so interesting that you said that, because that totally just like sparked this. And this is why I think having these conversations is so good too, because it helps you reflect, because it like gives you a light bulb. That made me think, because I was like, oh, I'm the opposite. I didn't really have my mom doing food things, but the good times, some of the best memories that I've got are when we used to go upstate to my aunt's and there was always food. And my aunt slather cream cheese, like thick cream cheese on her toast. And we always have like pastries and all the things. And so I think maybe my thing, because like I want to do that now. Like I'm always wanting to like bake something for somebody or like offer to do these food things, especially at church. And I think it's because like in my brain, I associate the good times with the food times, like when we all got together and things were peaceful and, like connected and things were going well, is because I associated it with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that makes me think, like, again, how do we connect? Like, we all connect to other human beings in different ways, right? And those pieces of our connection threads come from our childhood, right? Come from our experiences. And that's what we show our kids. But we also have to remember that we're not the only influences that our children are around. So we have to be able to understand how they like to be connected with. So we might be like, oh, here, mama wants to, give you this pumpkin pie.
Right.
So delicious. And you're expecting this warm reaction and interaction with them. But hold on, my kiddo doesn't like pumpkin. And so, it's looking at that. And that's why I'm so happy when I teach my infant massage courses, because starting from when those babies come out, like even before, you're looking at how are you actually connecting with them. There's so many different ways, like with your voice, with your touch, with your, facial features and body language. And it's fascinating. And we need to get to know them. We need to understand how our children like to be connected with, because unless you have that connection piece first through any interaction, especially the difficult ones where you're trying to get cooperation, well, it's not going to work unless you can get that, like, that first integral piece of connection. And it may just be like, and I love you. As simple as that, right? And we forget that. We forgot to say it. Like, how many times do we forget to just start a conversation off with, you know what? I love you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I like to, one of my favorite things to say is like, I love being your mom. Like, and I try to say that like very often. I'll just like random, like, I love being your mom. Just, that's the best job, just having you. And, you had said you can get that connection and that community with your family. And I think that's part of why I wanted a big family. I thought I was going to have like, I would have 80 kids, honestly, but I am no longer having any more because it's very hard on me. But I always wanted a big family. And I think that's why, because I didn't have a lot of family around growing up. Like my family's all over the place. I didn't have cousins growing up, things like that. I'm very, very close with my sister. And so I wanted that for my family, but it comes with its own set of challenges of learning everyone's different personalities. And they're all so, so different. Like my oldest is very timid and very emotional. And she's my kid that if I gave her an iPad, she would never move again. Like she'd like pack everything. And she's also artsy. And then my middle is very like, so actually over the summer, I got my oldest into OT and she's sensory sensitive and my middle is a sensory seeker. And so whenever we go to OT, my middleist would be like, let me touch that. And so he was like, oh yeah, get in on this. And so I think that kind of helped too, having them do it together because my oldest was like afraid to do it, but my middle was like, no, let's get in this. And it kind of helped her balance that. And she's changed a lot, but finding ways to meet their needs is so different. And now my littlest, she's getting to the age where she's getting her personality, her attitude, and she's got a big one. She is a tough cookie. And it's like, she can't talk yet. Like she barely speaks English. So it's like trying to figure out her needs is a different thing. Understanding their different little attitudes and their different triggers. Like right now, my youngest is just in a phase of wanting to cry all the time. And so even just this morning, my husband's like, what? I made you the chocolate milk. And I get like that all the time with her because I'm like, bro, what is the deal? Like he wants what she wants and she knows what she wants. So frustrating. Like at that age, it's like the cutest age because she does the cutest things, but it's also so stressful because I'm like, dude, what is happening? And so, yeah, it definitely comes with its own set of challenges of like building your own little community. Like my oldest is like, I'm going to live with you when I'm grown up. I said, girl, I already have plans to buy land and have like a little commune of our own. And I'm going to put spaces for RVs. And if you want to park an RV there, you can. If you want a house there, like great. I love the idea of urban communes. I think it's amazing.
Yeah. Well, I say that too with a lot of my friends as well, like where we have the same values. It's like, okay, this is when we move, when we're older, like this is what we need to set up, And it's such a good space to be in and it doesn't mean you have to believe the same thing and do the same thing, but you're grounded in core values, I think.
Right.
And sometimes it's really good to be challenged. And that's what our kids do because it makes us rethink because everything's continuously changing, right? Nothing remains stagnant. So even certain boundaries that we hold will change based on changing times. Like, I'm originally from Bangladesh, and my husband as well, but we grew up he grew up in London and I grew up in the States majority wise. And what does it mean to be Bengali for my kids, of Bangladeshi origin? We kind of following some of the rules that we know or some of the cultural practices from when we grew up, but then also we're kind of making our own way as well. And so when the kids would ask us certain questions, it was kind of like, why is it that we do this like this? And so it's good to be challenged because then it really makes you realize that, I'm just doing this because that's what my parents told me. But I need to know why. I need to have a reason for saying, no, this is why I won't allow you to have a sleepover, for example, or this is whatever your boundaries are. And so, having those conversations where you are challenged is actually often good because not only are you rethinking, reevaluating, but you're also giving your child the opportunity to be heard in their views and learn what they think and why they think what they think. So whereas in the past, I would have said, well, because I said so, and that's so frustrating, for anybody to hear that, right? Because hate that dictatorial way of parenting, it just doesn't work for anybody. And we see it when we look at kids nowadays and, the mental health crisis that is going on with kids. And because they're being told continuously what to do and how to be and how not to be. And yes, I mean, it's important to state as a parent what you believe and
Right.
you would like, but at the same time to offer that same space to your child and help them find out what they like and what they don't like and what they believe and what they don't believe. So yeah, those conversations I do welcome them, but then you need to have energy for them for sure,
Right.
in place for them as well. So it's okay to say to your child, like I've said to my kids when they want to talk about something, I'll say, you know what? It's 9 o'clock. It's past my bedtime.
Right.
Have this conversation tomorrow morning when I'm wide awake so that I can
Yeah.
give you full attention and my full energy. And yeah, and then it's a much better conversation,
We're in this weird time, I think, because the generations that are all right now here on this earth are all so different because things have moved so fast within the last, 100 years just of like, technology and the way, it went from like authoritarian parenting to kind of permissive parenting to trying to find somewhere in between. But then the technology is also coming up. And there's so many jokes around like gentle parenting and like giving in to your kids. And I can laugh about those too, because I know that it's not like, that's not really how it's done. Like I can see how that skit would be funny, but I also know that that's not realistic in the way that I actually do my parenting. And I think that they're like, they look at those on like, oh, if you're asking them about their feelings, like you're just giving them everything they want. But I think what I want to say out of that is that if we're willing to compromise and we're willing to be flexible and we're willing to have those conversations, a lot of times there's like a whole demographic of people that think that that's the problem because we're not teaching them to just follow the rules. But the reality is, by modeling that and by doing those things, we're giving them that practice to have that critical thinking and be flexible, which, if you think about the typical conversation of like, well, at a job, they're not going to let you do this. But the reality is jobs want you to be flexible also. So if you're able to have those conversations in a respectful way and learn how to address problems collectively,
Yes.
that's going to serve you much further than just saying, okay, yes, sir. And then, beating yourself up and running yourself ragged, and I don't think the people that look at it in that way are seeing that perspective of like, yeah, if you look at a big picture of just like letting everyone get their way all the time, like, yes, obviously that's doing a disservice. But if you're able to do it in a structured way that is both respectful and open and still holding firm to the boundaries that you do have set, like that's going to take them much further. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions around that too.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. The one thing that I would just add in there is that, every family has their own set of goals, like every parent, every child. And this is a certain, what you and I are talking about with a conscious parenting approach, however you want to call it. Again, there's many ways people refer to it: peaceful parenting, gentle parenting. But it boils down to the conscious awareness we have of what we're doing with our families and what are we wanting for our families? What are we wanting to see when our children are adults and able to then lead their own lives and navigate their professional and personal relationships? If within a family, the parent's desires and the child's desires match, and the way to do it is through a sort of authoritarian way, that and they're happy with that, then I feel like, okay, well, if they're happy with that and they feel that's successful for them and everybody's needs are getting met, then who am I to say, no, you need to parent differently?
Right.
Because, what's that phrase? Horses are for horses, horses for courses. There's I don't know, I can't think of it. But basically, everybody's different. Every society has different norms. Every family has different norms. And, my kids would always say, well, you say don't compare us to the neighbors next door. But then now, why are you comparing? When we do that, when we're trying to make a point to support our cause,
Right.
it's so easy to do the comparison thing. But
Right.
we're really doing an injustice to ourselves and our authority by saying, well, look at so-and-so, because so-and-so is not you, right?
Right.
So again, operating and making rules and parenting from a space of your own intentions and your own needs. That's what it's about, what works for your family, because different circumstances will also dictate what is actually feasible and not feasible.
Right.
So what works for my family, even if we have the same sort of teaching and skill tools, not work for your family in the implementation. And that's why coaching is so fantastic, because we get to help parents use those tools in the way that works for their family to get the solutions that they want. So, but I think it's just identifying, what do you really want for your family? What do you really want to be as a parent? What do you want for your child? What do you want for that relationship? And once you're able to define that, then you can go about and say, okay, this is a paradigm I need to follow, or this is the path that I need to take. Right. So yeah, I think, but I guess it boils down to, again, like when we know like conscious parenting and this way of parenting work, and it brings so much harmony within the family. And honestly, seriously, it does reduce parenting stress. No doubt about it. It's like 100% down. I know it has for me and all the clients that I've worked with for sure, So then you're like, well, why wouldn't you? But okay, explain to me, why wouldn't you? I fully respect it if it makes sense. Like, why you wouldn't. But yeah, I guess that's also part of the conscious living, perspective, is to be able to respect another person's viewpoint and understand where they're coming from and why they're making the choices they're making.
I actually had a client that we had discussed, like, kind of similar to my situation. For a while, I fought with my husband over the things that I was like, this is right and you need to do this, right? And we fought. And so in the midst of integrating the new principles, it got a little rocky. And this was actually my practice client. And it was interesting. And I think this is what's so beautiful about coaching too, is because it also helps us kind of learn and reflect. And it's like holding up a mirror. For each client, we have something that, also light bulbs for us. And so in the midst of me coaching my client, she was talking about her and her husband were kind of like at odds, because he leans more authoritarian based off of his triggers and his views and, his beliefs. And so they went back and forth for a while, and it was, known to me that he didn't necessarily agree with my way and parent coaching and, whatever. And so at one point we got into one of our sessions and I said, what if you just step back and let them have the relationship and the experience with him that they're going to have? And you just look at your experience. And what if they figure their things out together in their relationship? And you just, when they're doing their thing, you just hands up, step out of it and just let it roll, because they're going to have experiences with other people no matter where they go. And we're not able to control all of those. They're going to have different influences. So what if their relationship with their dad is just their relationship with their dad? And it is what it is. And it was one of those light bulb moments for me of just saying that. But I think that was also one of those moments for him that it reduced a lot of their stress, like you were saying, to their family, because it kind of like allowed them especially to let go of that. And so it eliminated some of that friction that they had there too. And it helped me in reflecting, like, oh, yeah, maybe I should just let their experience be their experience. But I think it was one of those things that it helped him be like, maybe this coaching thing isn't so bad. Like, I think he was surprised that I had given her, I guess, the advice to just like let go and let them find their footing in their relationship, because they'll know, like, maybe he stays like that forever, but dad's more stern, dad's more this. They know what to expect out of him, like, and it is what it is. And going back to earlier in the conversation when we were talking about how there's like a little bit of a stigma around getting that help as a parent, I think when people can see the truly non-judgmental way of going about things and saying, like, I have my opinions, but that doesn't mean that it's right for you, helps to, build more of that respect too. And those are some of my core things. And when I think about like homeschooling, even, I have a lot of people ask me, like, how do you do all of this? And I'm like, my kids are young. I do it because they learn through play. Like, so much of what I do is learn through play. Yeah. They're young enough that we can still do that. But my main focus at this age group that they're in is truly like the autonomy, the critical thinking, the emotional regulation. I'm like, they can learn. I mean, they could be 6 years old and learn how to write in cursive. I'm not worried about them learning how to write in cursive. You can learn to read at any age. I'm worried about like their little nervous system now and making sure that they're healthy in that aspect now so that later they don't have more block keeping them from becoming the people that they need to be.
Yeah, they develop the capacity now, right?
Yeah. And I think sometimes it's an unorthodox thing because a lot of times, especially in this shift of going into homeschool with the pandemic, a lot of people are like, school at home looks like sit at your desk and the teacher's there and it's still 8 hours and you're still, and so I very much unschool my kids. And so I think sometimes people look like, they're like, what curriculum do you use? What do you do for this? What do you do for that? I'm like, we wing it. I have curriculums. We have a lot of different things that we do and we're in a co-op and, whatever. But I'm like, we just live our lives and they just learn as we go. They're going to have to learn to read stuff. So we learn to read as we go.
Yeah, exactly. And it's more natural. I guess it's more natural learning than didactic learning. One thing that you just said, the reflection about your client and letting them come to the space, to a decision, to an awareness on their own. And that piece is also something that has really grown on me. It's like everybody has to come to a decision, has to come to a process on their own volition, because who likes to be forced, right? Want to be told what to do. Our kids don't want to be told what to do. The minute we are being forced into something, it means that, we're not in total agreement with it, right? So the compliance or the cooperation is not going to be there. And so the ability to let somebody's story be their story, and their process is so important. And I think taking it back to your question about being an expat mom, one of the beautiful things that has come out of my journey as an expat mom is being able to really appreciate another parent's story and being able to listen and really, it's going to sound funny, but look into their soul as they tell their story and just absorb it without any judgment, without any need for doing anything with their story, and just taking it in as new perspective, as another way, as a new idea, part of learning, I guess, if you want to call it, where you're just exposed to new ways and new situations, new information. And that's all building, neural circuitry in the brain, right? When we get new information. And then, of course, we do with it what we want. But I think being in a community where everybody's from different parts of the world, different backgrounds, is really enriching to be able to give us that open mind and openness, be accepting, but also still have the ability to evaluate our own existence and how we choose to parent. And but it just gives us more opportunity to see different ways. And then decide what ways work for us as a family.
Right. 100%. I couldn't agree more. Well, I know I've taken a lot of your time and I want to honor your time. So I do want to ask, though, if anyone listening could take one thing away, what would you say to someone listening to this who maybe is an expat or just doesn't have a village or is just in a state of overwhelm? What would you say if they could take one thing away from this when they're in just a tough season? What would you want them to take away from this?
I would just say that, well, the first thing we always say, but this is not my own, is that you're never alone because there's somebody out there who's also experiencing the same thing. My aim with any parent who comes to me who's facing a challenge is always like, how do we help reduce that stress of that challenge? And ultimately, how do we create more harmony? And the reason my coaching service is called Precious Parenting is because I honestly believe life is precious, people are precious, human connection is precious. And so that connection starts with the parent-child bond. And it's really for us to define the quality of that connection. So for anybody who's struggling, what I offer to you is just stop, take a breath, and just ask yourself, what kind of connection is it that you're wanting between you and your child or between you and yourself? And let that be the space that you can breathe into and take a moment for yourself to answer that question. And it may not be that you can answer it right then and there, depending upon how worked up you are or whatever is happening around you. But in that moment when you actually can come back to a state of balance, just really define that. Like, what is it that you're wanting in that parent-child connection? And let that be your guiding light. And you'll see that everything else can and really flow from there. Get the support that you need to help you decipher how to then create that connection if you don't already have the tools.
Love that. I love that. Where can people find you?
So you can find me on my website, which is www.preciousparenting.com, or you can email me at Rima, Rima, at preciousparenting.com. Those are the two places. I love to hear from any parent, all parents. I love hearing stories, and I'm always ready to help if parents need help. I'm ready to share. I take our work super seriously because I know, for myself, how the parenting journey has really changed in terms of doing it from more of a conscious approach. And I just want all parents to know that they can have that harmony. They can enjoy their parenthood.
I couldn't agree more with everything that you've said. Thank you so much for being a part of this conversation, because this was wonderful from two talkers.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Thank you so much, Jessica, for inviting me to your space, for letting me be part of your community, to share the parenting world and to share our parenting highs and lows. And yeah, good luck with all the work that you're doing, and keep loving up those parents, because we all need it.
Remember, you are powerful, you are worthy, you are valued, and you are loved. Keep pushing, keep loving, and most importantly, keep believing in your amazing ability to empower your legacy.